The golden morning sunlight spilled softly through the tall windows of Café Luna, painting warm streaks across the wooden floors, and the scent of freshly brewed coffee filled the air. The cafe was small but loved, a safe haven for students, artists, and office workers alike. Conversations hummed quietly, the sound of steaming milk blending perfectly with the music playing faintly in the background. But as the clock neared 9 p.m., the cheerful buzz started to fade. The staff exchanged worried looks, their smiles stiffening, their hands moving just a bit faster. Everyone knew what that hour meant. He was coming. And right on cue, the sound of expensive shoes echoed across the pavement outside, followed by the aggressive jingle of the doorbell. Mr. Victor Harlow had arrived. Victor wasn't just any customer. He was a millionaire real estate mogul, known across town for his wealth and his cruelty. His presence in the cafe was like a dark cloud passing over sunlight. He carried himself like he owned every room he walked into. His navy blue suit perfectly tailored, his gold cufflinks shining like little trophies of arrogance. "Good morning, Mr. Harlow," stammered Mason, the barista, forcing a smile. "Is it?" Victor sneered. "The last time I checked, good mornings required competent service. Do you have that here, or did I make another mistake coming in?" The cafe fell silent. Every time he visited, he made sure everyone knew their place, beneath him. He shouted over late orders, insulted the waiters, and once even threatened to have the cafe shut down after a small error in his bill. He didn't like to be served. He liked to be feared. Victor threw his briefcase onto a corner table, snapping his fingers for service like a king summoning a servant. "The usual," he barked. "And make sure it's done properly this time." "Yes, sir," Mason whispered, his hands trembling as he started to prepare Victor's double espresso. In the corner, the cafe manager, Mr. Rowland, peeked nervously from behind the counter. He'd tried once to confront Victor about his behavior, and had received a call from Victor's lawyer the next day. Since then, everyone just stayed quiet. It was easier to survive his visits than to challenge him. But today was different. Today, there was a new waitress, a girl the others had barely gotten to know. Her name was Elena. She'd joined Café Luna only 2 days ago, a soft-spoken young woman in her mid-20s with bright brown eyes and a calmness about her that made everyone feel instantly at ease. She had a kind smile that didn't seem forced, even during the morning rush. Nobody knew much about her except that she'd recently moved to the city, looking for a fresh start. As she carried a tray of pastries to a nearby table, she noticed the tension in the air, the way the staff avoided eye contact. The nervous glances toward the door. "What's going on?" she whispered to Mason. Mason just shook his head slightly. "Don't talk. That's Victor Harlow. You'll know soon enough." A few minutes later, Victor slammed his hand on the table. "Excuse me, does this place serve customers or just collect dust?" Elena turned instinctively. "I'll take care of it," she said quietly, before anyone could stop her. The cafe staff froze. Nobody volunteered to serve Victor. She walked over to his table, holding a notepad with professional composure. "Good morning, sir," she greeted softly. "What can I get for you today?" Victor eyed her up and down, smirking. "New, aren't you? Let's see how long you last." "Yes, sir," she said, her tone polite but steady. "What would you like?" "The usual," he said carelessly. "Double shot espresso, extra smooth foam, and if it's even 1 degree too hot or too cold, you'll regret it." "I'll do my best," Elena replied calmly. He chuckled mockingly. "That's what the last one said before she ran off crying. Let's see if you're made of stronger stuff." The words hung in the air like poison. People glanced up from their tables, pretending to read newspapers, but their ears were tuned to every word. Elena went behind the counter and prepared his drink carefully, measuring every step with quiet precision. Mason watched her nervously. "You don't have to—" "It's fine," she said simply. "He's just a man ordering coffee." When she brought the cup to his table, she placed it gently before him and smiled. "Here you go, sir." Victor lifted the cup, sniffed it dramatically, then took a sip. For a moment, it looked like he'd say nothing. Then he scoffed loudly. "Too bitter. Typical incompetence. You people can't even brew a proper coffee, yet you expect tips." The insult stung everyone in earshot. Mason's jaw clenched. The manager sighed, defeated. Elena, however, didn't react. She just looked at him with calm, thoughtful eyes. "Is there something specific you'd like me to fix, sir?" she asked gently. "Fix?" he repeated mockingly. "Yes, maybe fix your career choice. Waitressing isn't for everyone. Especially not for—" He stopped himself, but his tone dripped with disdain. "People like you." There it was. The humiliation. The line that usually broke whoever he was targeting. But Elena didn't flinch. She just straightened her posture and said quietly, "I'll bring you another cup." He leaned back with a satisfied smirk, thinking he'd won again. "You'd better, and make it fast. I have meetings more important than your existence." The cafe had gone completely silent now. Every customer watched the exchange with tension written across their faces. The air felt thick, heavy with fear and anger. Yet Elena moved with the same quiet grace, brewing a new cup, her hands steady as stone. Mason leaned toward her. "You're not upset." She smiled faintly. "You can't let people like him decide your worth." As she set down the second cup before Victor, the manager whispered under his breath, "Please don't say anything more. Just get through it." Victor tasted the new coffee. He paused, then frowned. "Still wrong," he said, louder this time so the entire cafe could hear. "Honestly, how hard is it to follow instructions? You should be grateful I'm giving you feedback. Most people wouldn't even bother." The room froze again. Mason's hands gripped the counter. One of the customers muttered, "Someone needs to stop this guy." And then, the moment came. Elena slowly set the tray down beside her. Her face remained calm, but there was a quiet fire in her eyes now. She took one deep breath, looked him straight in the eyes and said clearly, "Sir, I think you've mistaken this cafe for your kingdom. But here everyone deserves respect, including the people serving your coffee." The cafe went absolutely still. The world seemed to hold its breath. Victor's jaw dropped slightly, not out of shock that someone had spoken, but that someone had dared to stand before him. And that was the moment everything began to change. For a long, tense moment, Café Luna stood frozen. You could have heard the hum of the espresso machine, the ticking of the clock, even the flutter of a napkin against the floor. Everyone's eyes were locked on Elena, the soft-spoken waitress who had just done the impossible. Victor Harlow blinked, as if unsure he'd heard her correctly. His hand paused mid-air, the porcelain cup trembling slightly in his grip. "Excuse me?" he said at last, his voice low and sharp. Elena didn't back down. "I said," she repeated gently but firmly, "everyone here deserves respect, including the people serving your coffee." The color drained from Mason's face. The manager, Mr. Rowland, nearly dropped the plate he was holding. Nobody had ever dared to challenge Victor Harlow to his face. For years, Victor had used his wealth as a weapon. He believed fear equaled power. People always bowed, always apologized, always gave him the last word. But now, for the first time, someone was standing tall in front of him. Not with anger, not with sarcasm, but with calm, unshakable dignity. He leaned forward, his lips curling into a cold smile. "Do you know who I am?" "Yes," Elena replied softly. "A man who's so rich that he's forgotten what it means to be kind." Gasps echoed through the cafe. An elderly couple sitting near the window stopped mid-conversation, eyes wide. A teenager in the corner whispered, "Did she just say that to him?" Victor's jaw tightened. "You should watch your mouth, little girl. I could have this place shut down with one phone call." Elena didn't move. "Maybe you could," she said, her tone steady. "But money can't buy you what you've lost. Decency." Her words hung in the air, sharper than any insult he'd ever thrown. For the first time, Victor didn't have a clever comeback ready. His face darkened, his hand tightening around the cup until his knuckles turned white. "How dare you?" he hissed. "You think you can lecture me? You're a waitress, and you're a man who's forgotten to be human," she replied quietly. A stunned silence filled the cafe. The customers looked from one to the other, the tension rising like a storm about to break. Mason's hands were shaking as he stood behind the counter, half terrified, half amazed. Elena continued, her voice calm but filled with quiet conviction. People like me, sir, the ones who serve, clean, and stand behind counters, we work hard. We don't expect much, just a little respect. But you walk in here and treat everyone like they're beneath you. Maybe it makes you feel powerful, but it doesn't make you strong. Victor's face went red. You're fired, he snapped. Right now. The manager stepped forward timidly. Sir, please, let's not... Victor pointed at Elena. If she's still working here by tomorrow, this cafe is finished. I'll ruin this place! Everyone waited for Elena to crumble, to apologize, to beg for her job. Instead, she smiled faintly. If losing this job means standing up for what's right, then I'll leave proudly. And then, to everyone's shock, she took off her apron, folded it neatly, and set it on the counter. She turned to the rest of the cafe, her voice steady and warm. I'm sorry, everyone. I didn't mean to cause a scene, but no one deserves to be treated like they're invisible. The room was silent for a heartbeat, and then, slowly, people began to clap. First, the elderly woman near the window, then a young man at the corner table, then the rest. Soft claps that grew louder, stronger, until the entire cafe echoed with applause. Victor froze, staring around in disbelief. The same customers who usually avoided his gaze were now standing, applauding the girl who had defied him. You're making a mistake, he said coldly, his voice shaking. Do you think these people will help you? They're nobodies, Elena met his gaze. Maybe, but I'd rather stand with nobodies who have hearts than with a man who lost his. Victor's lips tightened. He grabbed his briefcase and stormed toward the door, his expensive shoes clacking angrily on the floorboards. Just as he reached for the handle, an old man sitting by the window spoke softly. You just got served something money can't buy. Dignity. Victor froze for half a second, then shoved the door open and stormed out, the bell above the door jingling one last time as he disappeared into the street. The cafe erupted in whispers. Mason ran to Elena, eyes wide. I can't believe you did that. You stood up to him! Elena just laughed softly, a tired but genuine laugh. Someone had to. Mr. Rowland walked out from behind the counter, still pale but smiling faintly. You might have just saved us all, you know, he said quietly. He's been tormenting this place for years. I just never had the courage to stop him. Elena shrugged. Sometimes it only takes one voice. 1 week later, Café Luna was busier than ever. Sunlight filled the room, the smell of baked croissants and coffee dancing in the air. But there was something different, something brighter. The atmosphere was lighter, the laughter louder, the smiles more genuine. At the far table, a group of students were whispering excitedly over their phones. It's still trending, one said. Look, Waitress stands up to rude millionaire. It's everywhere! Unbeknownst to Elena, a customer that day had recorded the entire confrontation. The video had spread online like wildfire. Millions watched as the young waitress faced down a millionaire bully with nothing but courage and calm. The comments overflowed with admiration. She's my hero. This is what standing up for yourself looks like. More people need courage like hers. By the next morning, Café Luna had lines out the door. People wanted to see the place where it happened. Some came to meet Elena, others came just to feel inspired. Mr. Rowland, who once feared losing his cafe, now stood proudly behind the counter. And when Elena walked in that morning, he called her into the office. I've been thinking, he said, smiling warmly. We need someone who can lead this place, someone brave, kind, and fair. How would you feel about being our new manager? Elena blinked in disbelief. Manager? Me? You earned it, he said simply. You didn't just serve coffee that day. You served courage. Tears welled up in her eyes as she accepted. A few days later. The doorbell jingled again one morning. Everyone looked up, and the room fell quiet. It was him. Victor Harlow. But this time, he didn't walk in like he owned the place. His shoulders were lower, his steps slower. He looked different. Human. He walked to the counter, cleared his throat, and said softly, Is Elena here? Mason hesitated, then nodded toward the back. She's the manager now. Victor smiled faintly. I heard. Elena appeared a moment later, her expression calm but curious. Mr. Harlow. He took a deep breath. I came to apologize. You were right about everything. The cafe watched in silence as the man everyone once feared finally spoke words no one thought he could. I've spent my life thinking money gave me power, he said quietly. But that day, you showed me what real strength looks like. Elena smiled gently. It's never too late to change, sir. Victor nodded, his voice almost breaking. Can I order a coffee? Of course, she said softly. On the house. And as he took his seat for the first time, the cafe wasn't filled with fear, but with warmth. Because that day, everyone learned a truth that would never fade. Power can buy silence, but only respect can earn peace. And from that day forward, Café Luna wasn't just a coffee shop anymore. It was a reminder that sometimes one voice, one act of courage can change everything.